This meeting was called by Councillor Binney, Bowes, Colley, Deacon, Devine, Forrest, Garner, Meikle-John and Sinclair. And before we get any further, I'd just like to thank Bailey Kerr for chairing the last council meeting. I believe he did a good job as well. If members who are attending remotely wish to speak, they should use the raised hand icon on screen. I will ask all those who wish to speak have done so before closing the debate, but at that point it's your responsibility to ensure you attract my attention, even by cutting in verbally, otherwise you may miss your chance to speak. Members joining remotely should ensure their cameras are turned on at all times, and if everyone could ensure their mobile phones on silent or switched off. First item of business is the Sederland. Mr Moody.
Thank you, Provost. Provost Bissett.
Present.
We have apologies from Deputy Provost Balfour and also from Councillor Aitchison. Councillor Aitken.
Here.
Councillor Anslow.
Present.
Councillor Binney.
Present.
Councillor Bowes.
Present.
Councillor Brown. Bailey Buchanan.
Here.
Councillor Bundy.
Present.
Councillor Colley.
Present.
Apologies have been submitted by Councillor Deacon. Councillor Devine.
Present.
Apologies are also submitted by Councillor Flynn. Councillor Forrest.
Present.
Councillor Garner.
Anshaw.
Councillor Hannah.
Present.
Councillor Kelly.
Present.
Bailey Kerr. Bailey Kerr, I think you may be present online, but you're on mute. I'll come back. Councillor McCabe.
Yep.
Councillor Meikle-John.
Present.
Councillor Murtagh.
Shot.
Councillor Nimmo.
Present.
Councillor Patterson.
Present.
Apologies have been submitted by Councillor Patrick. Councillor Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Ritchie.
Present.
Apologies submitted by Councillor Robertson. And Councillor Sinclair.
Here.
And Councillor Spears.
Present.
Thanks, Mr Moody. Agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Do we have any declarations of interest? No.
Convener, Provost, sorry, I have a declaration of interest. I'm not sure if others do.
Okay, could you tell us what it is?
It's in relation to the substantive item on the agenda, which references Grangemouth complex and the closure. And I would note, as per previous items, that my employer is Michelle Thompson, MSP, who has been significant in the amount of work that she's done on this and raising these issues in Parliament. However, her opinions do not influence my opinions on this matter, which are entirely independently on my own.
Okay, there's just a bit of a problem with the live stream just now, so if you just give us a couple of minutes. Back to you, Councillor Murtagh. Are you finished with the declaration?
So just to clarify, because were we being live streamed or not? Was that us beginning live stream? Okay. So my transparency statement was, and it is a transparency statement, not so it doesn't preclude me from debate, but that my employer, as per my registered members' interest, is Michelle Thompson, MSP, and therefore she has done significant amounts of work in raising the issues related to Grangemouth and the Grangemouth Future Industry Board mentioned in the motion in Parliament and in other places. However, her opinions are not my opinions, which I form entirely off my own back, and they do not influence me in any way. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Murtagh. Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Provost. It's the same transparency statement, but for Stephen Kerr, MSP.
Okay, thank you. So we'll now move on to agenda items. Oh, Councillor Spears, my apologies.
Thank you. As a transparency statement, I've done numerous TV interviews and newspaper interviews regarding this matter.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Spears. Okay, so we'll move on to agenda item 3, which is Grangemouth Industrial and Manufacturing Sector, and an amendment has been received, so there will be a debate. And everybody's got a copy of the motion, so we'll go to officers first for questions. Okay, questions to officers first. No questions for officers, so Councillor Michael, John, would you like to speak to your...
Sorry, Convener Provost, I've got a question.
Councillor Murtagh.
Yeah, I do have a question. I just want to ask officers, in terms of the ability of a council leader to write off their own back to the Prime Minister or anyone else, is there anything which actually restricts the ability of a council leader to be able to write to anybody they see fit on a matter relating to this council?
We'll go to Mr. Laurie.
Thank you, Provost. Thank you. Very straightforward answer. And that answer is no, there is no such restriction. Okay,
that's really helpful. As in terms of the Grangemouth Future Industries Board, which is mentioned in the meeting, Falkirk Council has had representation on that board for some time, have they not? Can you tell me when that actually began?
Mr. Benny.
Through you, Provost. It predates my time at the council, so I've been here 3 years, and I was under the impression it had been going for, I think, a year before I arrived. So yeah, 4 years.
Okay, and Falkirk Council have representation on other bodies relating to, so there's obviously a matter of sort of coexisting projects which feed into Grangemouth Future Industries Board, and we hear a lot about Project Willow, which I believe is an independent, it's led by Ernst & Young, I think, or maybe I may be wrong, maybe one of the ones, but that also feeds into some of the discussions with Grangemouth Future Industries Board. Is that correct? I know there's maybe the governance could be clarified on how that all works. It's helpful.
Mr. Benny.
Through you, Provost. I think it would be important to try and explain that the Grangemouth Future Industries Board has been through several kind of transformations during its time. So I don't think it would be fair to sort of look at it as a consistent body that's looked at always the same amounts of work. So in its current incarnation, it has representation from the UK government and from the Scottish government and from the council leader, but also a host of other partners, to the extent that there are, maybe 30 people on a typical meeting of this group at the moment. And yes, the agenda could include things like Project Willow, but its current incarnation has only really been going for 2 meetings. So I don't think it would be fair to set out what the current kind of focus of work is, because it's only been going in the current guise since, I would say, November of 2024.
Okay. Am I correct to think that there are 2 kind of levels of meeting and in its current incarnation of the Grangemouth Future Industries Board? So there's a sort of more executive branch type meeting at a higher level, and then there's a sort of wider participation, which includes, for example, members of the community on that board.
Yeah, there are 2 levels. There's a kind of leadership board and then a program board. The program board for Falkirk Council, Michael would be our representative on the program board, and there are a number of kind of activities that I would probably argue are happening anyway, and that level of board more kind of captures the activity and makes sure that all the partners are informed about it. And then the senior board has the kind of political leadership.
Okay, so the senior board includes political leadership, and that includes the UK government, the Scottish government, and leadership from this council as well.
That's true. There would be representation from Forth Valley College, trade unions, the community volunteering service, and some other leading business figures, typically from the Grangemouth area.
Okay. And this matter, which seems to have instigated this particular special counsel, in terms of the news of the closure of the ethanol plant at Grangemouth, that would have been presumably reported to the leadership board and maybe the programme board at the time in which those decisions were made?
I don't believe that was the case. I don't think the ethanol plant was an item of business that the board considered.
So in terms of this council being aware of the closure of the ethanol plant, do any of the officers have an awareness of when that was then? The prospective closure of the ethanol plant?
My recollection would be that it was either the day before the announcement or on the day of the announcement. It wasn't something that I believe we were actively aware of for a large amount of time prior to that. There was obviously pressures in all sorts of parts of the business, like there are in all sectors of manufacturing in the UK right now. But this was not a long-standing item at the Future Industries Board, and I would say something like the closure of the refinery has had significantly more amount of time. Michael's just showing me the 19th of March, 2024.
Day after the official announcement.
Right, day after the official announcement.
So the 19th of March 2024 is the first date that we found out that the ethanol plant was going to close?
No, apologies. A year ago, INEOS made clear that there were pressures on that particular part of the business, but obviously the announcement that the business was actually going to close was this year.
Was this year in January. I suppose I'll have to go back and check my own notes about meetings in which I was at, but that, I think, I'm confused that that's when we were first made aware of the January closure. Obviously maybe I'm just thinking about the announcements about it being imminent, etc., and that information was shared within meetings. But I'm surprised if we as a council didn't know that that was closing in January. But that's my questions. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much, Councillor Murtagh. We'll now go to Councillor Bundy. Sorry, we'll go back to Mr. Benny for our reply.
Through you, Provost, I think I would say, Councillor Murtagh, there's a difference between a business making a statement that says if conditions don't change, we anticipate pressures on that business and it could close, in just the same way that the announcement was made in advance of the refinery closure, that there was pressure on the refinery and it too could close. But I think I remember being in this chamber when that announcement about the refinery was made, and people were still surprised by the decision being made. So I think that's the point I would make. It's that, yes, the business had made it clear that there were pressures on this particular part of its business, and that if things didn't improve, then a potential closure in Q1 was possible. Sorry, yeah, well, Q1 of 2025. Yeah, but that still doesn't. That still allows us to be for it to be news and for us to be informed of that actual closure.
Okay, I mean, I don't have a follow-up question, but I suppose what you've clarified is that we did have, I was not surprised that the ethanol plant closed in Q1, because that seemed to be what was indicated might happen. So that's my point, my question, but you've clarified that is your understanding, so thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Councillor Bundy, then Councillor Spears, and then Councillor Han.
Thank you, Provost. I'm just going through the motion. What is there contained within the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal which deals with the here and now?
Mr. Berry?
Through you, Provost. The Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal is a hugely positive intervention, but I don't believe it's for the here and now. It's a 10-year commitment, projects coming in phased pipelines. Typically, the innovation activity that would be around the kind of transition that Grangemouth is going to go through are later in that 10-year cycle. So for the here and now, I don't believe there are growth deal interventions.
Thank you for that answer. So there is a risk that the people who would benefit from the skills training that is part of the growth deal could be gone because they've got a job elsewhere.
I think there's definitely a risk at the moment of employees leaving the Grangemouth area who have skills which are valuable to the future transition of Grangemouth. So yeah, you're right.
Thank you. In terms of the fourth Green Freeport, what impact does the closure of the refinery have on that in terms of potential investment? Or there's some, well, INEOS have said that their suggestion is to import oil and gas. Is there any benefits in terms of tax because of the Freeport in that?
Through you, Provost. I'm not personally aware of any direct impacts between the refinery and the Green Freeport. Obviously, my sense would be more that brand Grangemouth needs to be strong for the fourth Green Freeport to be as successful as it possibly can. So whilst the refinery announcement's a real sadness for all of us and for the communities, I think what we're looking for is positive news and positive commitments about the long-term sustainability of Grangemouth to then allow us to take advantage of interventions like the fourth Green Freeport.
Thank you. So Project Willow, do we know when it's going to be released, the proposals?
The latest statement I saw from Ed Miliband was that it's expected this month or next month. So it's imminent, but I'm not in possession of any direct information on the actual date.
And in terms of content, is that again going to be a long-term vision, or is it going to have anything for the here and now?
Again, I think it will be that they've done an exploratory phase and then we will move into another phase of development. It won't be, that some sort of, manufacturing facilities being invested in and created. This will be, again, a longer term project, but I don't want to speak in too much detail about Project Willow because obviously we're waiting for the report to be presented.
And the final question is regarding Project Acorn and that carbon capture. How does the closure of the refinery impact Project Acorn?
Through you, but I'm afraid I wouldn't have enough knowledge to advise councillors on that particular project and the interrelation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Bundy. Thanks, Mr. Berry. We will now move to Councillor Spears.
Thank you. Have we had any reports back or updates for the Falkirk Industries Board since its conception?
Mr. Berry?
Can I clarify the question? Are we talking about reports back to Falkirk Council?
Well, certainly it is the Falkirk Industries Board. Surely they would want to keep us updated on what they're doing.
I can't personally remember in the 3 years that I've been in post that we brought a report about the activity of the Grangemouth Future Industries Board. As I've said, it's been through several transition periods and there haven't been any decisions for council to have to make in relation to its participation. And I think, I've I appeared at the Scottish Parliament where I attempted to sort of present our aspirations for more activity and more decisions and more visible support to be coming from that body. But yeah, no, we haven't brought another report to council on this.
I'll leave that to the general public's opinion. We are entering desperate times in Grangemouth, and if we have boards that are meant to be looking at Project Willow, Project Acorn or whatever, then we need to hear from them. They're not a talking shop. They're there for a reason, and we're awaiting what they come up with.
Okay, is that you finished, Councillor Spears?
It is for the now.
Thanks very much. We'll now go to Councillor Hannah.
Thank you, Provost. To some extent, Councillor Spears has covered my question, because I was going to ask about the Grangemouth Future Industries Board and when we've ever received a report about it. I'm aware of having received reports about the growth deal, about the Freeport. On numerous occasions, we've been kept well informed about our involvement there. Are there many boards that Falkirk Council is represented on at both political and officer level that we don't get reports about? It does seem to me that Council should be aware of what is being done in the name of Falkirk Council.
Okay, Mr. Bennett.
Through you, Provost. The political involvement on the Future Industries Board has only been a recent situation, as I said, autumn 2024, following a reshaping of GFIB. So it's largely been an officer civil servant endeavour, and the typical process, as I understood it, of council was not to bring reports for noting. You bring reports for decision. So that's why reports have come forward about the growth deal and the Green Freeport, because we've been asking for permission to submit outline and full business cases. But there has been no decision for council to make with regards to GFIB, and if there was, then I would definitely bring one. With regards to Project Willow, we did do an officer-led briefing, I think it was a couple of months ago. Yep. So we've always done our best to inform elected members, and if there is a view today that you'd like to hear more about GFIB, then I'd be more than happy to organise a briefing to give you that information.
I think that would be valuable. I do think that when there are things that Falkirk Council is represented on and is putting forward views of Falkirk Council should know about it.
Provost, could I come in just on that matter?
Yes, okay.
Just to clarify, first of all, the GFIB is a government body, not one that's set up by Falkirk Council, and we're there at invitation by them, including political leadership. So it's not Falkirk Council that determines there's an invitation there. The minutes are publicly available on the government website for anybody to see. So they are quite infrequent. And I'm sure Mr. Berry would agree with that. And traditionally, for the last few years, it's essentially been an officer-led board and not one that's been politically led. It's only been, I think there's only been 2 meetings that have been political meetings.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Councillor Michael John. We'll now go to Bailey Buchanan.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay, Provost?
Yep. Loud and clear.
Thank you very much. Well, obviously, we're all really concerned about the serious impact this situation is developing into for the community of Grangemouth. I was listening intently, and I'm hoping you all were in relation to what Councillor Murtagh was saying. The fact is that the questions that Councillor Murtagh was really getting to, the salient point was never answered. And I'm just wondering, I don't need, you're all intelligent people, but the fact is what Councillor Murtagh was really going to ask was never asked. So I'm just wondering whether there's any officer or there's any, and obviously I would say the leader of the council in terms of the motion would like to answer the salient point that Councillor Murtagh was driving at. Thank you.
What was that salient point?
Well, as I said to you already, Provost, this room's full of intelligent people, and if anybody couldn't pick up what Councillor Murtagh was driving at, then I'm sure that somebody will enlighten us before the end of this meeting. But I think it maybe will refer it maybe to the leader of the council to answer. I see a wry smile on her face, so she knows that I know, and I'm quite sure that a few others will know exactly what the question is, and a very pertinent question too. Thank you, Provost.
Provost, Councillor Garner, I'm not sure what the question was. I'll happily admit to that. Councillor Binney, did you have your light on? Okay. Councillor Murtagh, you want to come back in?
It was just, I realise not everybody shares the same psychic abilities that myself and Bailey Buchanan do. However, I think that as I will be reminded that it is questions to officers at this point, and I'll be happy to elaborate on my questions or otherwise during the debate. But thank you for preempting that, Councillor Bailey Buchanan.
Okay, thanks very much, Bailey Buchanan. Thanks very much, Councillor Murtagh. We'll now go to Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. Nice to see you back.
Thank you.
Leading on from Councillor Murtagh's question regarding when we first heard of the ethanol plant closure, can I ask when we as a council first heard of or first became aware of the closure of the refinery itself?
Mr. Bailey?
Through you, Provost, I'd have to go back and get the exact date of when the announcement was made about the full closure of the refinery. There was a similar process taken by INEOS whereby they announced, if market conditions didn't improve, there was a threat of closure at the refinery in a, from memory, it was 12 months' time. And then we reached that point and an announcement was made. But I'd have to check my diary and emails for the exact date.
No, I think you confirmed it, Mr. Benny, that when the announcement was made, and we probably just heard about it on the day of the announcement, but we were well aware that it was in the pipeline, so to speak, maybe 12 months prior. That then leads me on to what's already been hinted at, the actual role of the Grangemouth Future Industries Board. The thing that I pick up in that is future. So I've just got a question about, it's a rhetorical question, what were they actually doing? What have they done for 4 years? We don't know. So therefore, what I'm going to ask, and I was pleased to hear the council leader say that the minutes of these meetings are available online. I'm going to request that officers provide elected members with copies of the minutes for the past 4 years of the Grangemouth Future Industries Board, just to give us a wee bit of knowledge about what they've actually been doing or not been doing. I'll leave that just now, Provost, until we get into the kind of wider debate. I do have another couple of questions, but I think it's more for the general debate. Yeah. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thanks very much. So no other questions. We'll go to Councillor Meiklejohn to speak to our motion.
Okay, thank you, Provost, and I do hope that this is seen as a positive piece of action by Council, recognising the challenges and also recognising what, as a Council, we can do with the limited abilities. I think that the motion itself is very self-explanatory. And I don't believe that the importance of Grangemouth and its contribution to both the local and national economy has been fully appreciated. Rightly, the focus has been on the premature closure of Scotland's only refinery. And while there are plans such as Project Willow and Acorn, which was spoke already about in the questions, and the Falkirk and Grangemouth growth deal to support the transition that is required, we know that it will take years before that is into that delivery phase. This has, however, overshadowed other critical areas of decline within the petrochemical sector, such as the final closure of the ethanol plant. And that was highlighted as a potential risk some time ago, but it was only more recently that that came to that final conclusion. As we move towards cleaner and greener, the reliance on plastics is reducing, bringing a further blow to the manufacturing jobs in Scotland, which needs to be urgently addressed. That's why Falkirk Council, we need to be calling on both UK and Scottish governments to act and deal specifically with the here and now issues, as well as a longer term for Grangemouth as a key manufacturing hub for the future and protecting jobs. This is not in any way seeking to negate the impact of the refinery closure, but to acknowledge that the wider impact on the whole industrial and chemical manufacturing sector in Grangemouth, and to look at the options to support that transition, and also to recognise the urgency of the situation. We are in the unfortunate position in our bid for a growth deal was at the end of that growth deal process. Having only begun the development in 2017, therefore being one of the last of the funding was significantly reduced, and what was there had to be shared with Borders and Murray. While the £90 million investment is very welcome, I don't believe that it reflects the national importance of Grangemouth, particularly if you consider the other areas of significance really receiving much larger allocations, such as in Aberdeen, £600 million. However, the growth deal should not be seen as a panacea to delivering what's required. It's a 10-year plan with the £90 million spanning across that timescale over a range of projects. An additional £10 million was given more recently to specifically address the emerging issues, which Rachel Reeves referred to on a number of occasions when being questioned about Grangemouth. The reality, however, is that it's nowhere inadequate, and spread out over 10 years, it's equivalent to £1 million per year and will not enable the investment that is truly required. As a local authority, we are limited in what we can do, as the types of interventions needed are not within our gift. But what we do have is the ability to call on governments to account and bring them to the table, highlight what the sector needs as support, investment and changes to regulation to allow the diversification. An example being the desire to diversify and development of aviation fuel. Several months ago, I sat in a meeting of the GFIB Leadership Board where the UK Minister has the case to put Edinburgh and Grangemouth could become a unique area in developing alternative aviation fuel, but that would require a change in regulation, creating a market and pushing the climate agenda. The answer is we're not changing the rules for you. That was very narrow-minded. A few months later, new government brought hope and pre-election commitments to saving the refinery. But having formed a government, that commitment has completely faltered. Our local MPs continually calling for action. Commitment to Grangemouth and to manufacturing in Scotland is very much under threat, with the only 2 Scottish MPs signing a letter calling for action around the refinery being our local MPs. It appears that no matter how vocal they are, they're just blowing in the wind with neither their leadership nor their colleagues' support. Commitment to manufacturing has been demonstrated in other areas. 8 pilot sites for the development of aviation fuel, none of which are in Scotland. Grangemouth passed by again a time when there's a serious need to look to protect jobs. We have a vision for the future of Grangemouth to be a key area of energy production and manufacturing, supporting local jobs, which can continue to provide significantly for both the local and the national economy. What is clear is that UK government desperately need to grow the economy to deal with the currently growing financial deficit, and to do so at pace. It's essential that there is targeted investment. There has recently been warm words to escalate the development of the Project Willow, but we've yet to see any substance behind that. There are still changes in regulation required that allow the development of the alternative energy sector, including aviation fuel, and due to the location and the transport links, Grangemouth is a prime area for this manufacturing. It's not about plaudits and pats in the back. It's a call for action, and the Council is a willing partner to do that. The Labour amendment is not focused just on Grangemouth and therefore deflects from its significance. That's not to say that other businesses that are listed in the amendment are not important. They are. However, they are also receiving continued support through engagement with Scottish enterprise and in some cases directly with government. Example being Haven, who employ disabled people, have very recently received Scottish Government direct support, having been awarded a contract and a commitment to work with them to establish a sustainable business plan, and others in a similar situation. We need to be calling on governments to do the right thing and get behind the diversification that's needed, protecting jobs and supporting manufacturing and fuel security for the future, and that needs to happen now. I move that motion.
Thanks very much. Councillor Meikle-John, do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Provost. I'm obviously extremely saddened by the situation in Grangemouth, but I'm happy to second the motion.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll now go to Councillor Hannah to move for amendment.
Provost, I think I'll defer to Councillor Nimmo, who's the local member for Grangemouth.
Councillor Nimmo.
Yeah, thanks very much, Provost. This is obviously a reconvened meeting from the 30th of January. I'm not sure if our amendment was actually circulated at that point, but there has been hard copies issued this afternoon to everybody. Firstly, can I make a transparency statement? I've taken advice from the Chief Governance Officer regarding my employment with Brian Leishman MP. Now, this is because Brian is mentioned in our amendment, and having taken that advice, I'm content that I'm able to continue to move our amendment and take part in the debate going forward. I think things have been superseded somewhat since this motion and amendment were first due to come before us. We now have redundancy notices issued to INEOS employees. Both BP and most recently INEOS have been guilty of not investing in the refinery's future viability, and that is why we're now having to deal with the closure, the imminent closure. I really wish we were not in this position, Provost, trying to save the Grangemouth refinery and the thousands of local jobs that are involved, but we are where we are. It's still possible, however, to save the refinery. Unite the Union has a plan to do just that, but our Westminster government needs to fully engage and not just play lip service to the issue. Having said that, the Scottish Government are not entirely blameless in all this. They knew about the potential closure 3 years ago and chose to do nothing at the time. As a country, why would we rely on another country to provide our fuel when we can make it ourselves? This refinery is of national importance, which has already been highlighted. There is a national security element to all this. What happens if the ships stop delivering fuel? What do we do then? Brian Leishman, our local Labour MP for Alloa and Grangemouth, has led from the front in respect of challenging the closure. He has been very vocal and on his feet in the House of Commons numerous times now, and spoke on national television and in the press nationally and locally in support of retaining the Grangemouth plant and its workforce. It's quite clear to me that our UK Labour government has failed Grangemouth and its people. There is no just transition, or plans would have been put in place before the redundancy notices were issued. The same goes for Project Willow. Totally ineffectual, and it's a case of too little, too late. The letters that are to be sent need to be sent in the strongest terms, outlining the impending impact that these closures will have on Grangemouth and the surrounding areas and the businesses involved. There needs to be the political will to save Grangemouth plant at all levels and protect the jobs at the other sites mentioned in our amendment. This has not been forthcoming so far. And Provost, I'll leave it at that for the time being, but I'm happy to move our amendment.
Thanks very much, Councillor Nimmo. Do you have a seconder?
Thank you, Provost. I'll briefly second the motion. I think I'm slightly perplexed to know why at this particular juncture, as Councillor Nimmo has said, we're having a special meeting to discuss this issue. We have known about the problems over a long period of time. I'm also slightly perplexed about why we're having a special council meeting, as I think Councillor Murtagh was alluding to, in order to authorise the council leader to write a letter. It does seem to be more politically orientated than anything else. That said, I think we're all in agreement about our concerns about the job losses. There are nobody around this room who is happy about the situation that about job losses in the Grangemouth area and the Falkirk Council area and across central Scotland, because this is not just about Grangemouth. The number of job losses that we're seeing is going to impact, sadly, across the whole of the economy in central Scotland. I think it is an issue. I know that Mr. Benny has said that, talked about when we actually knew for sure, being when there was a notice that that certain businesses were about to close. I think we have known for much, much longer than that there was a risk. And clearly the time to act is when there is a risk, not when the closure has been announced, if we are going to do anything. The situation is a sad one, and yes, I absolutely 100% support the idea of us adding our voice to the calls for some action to be taken. But it is not just about any one industry. It's about jobs across central Scotland. It's about jobs across the Falkirk Council area, and I do think we need to take that very, very seriously. The Falkirk Labour Group has been working with our MPs, with Brian Leishman, Ewan Steinbank, and to a certain extent Kirstine Sullivan as well, who have all been trying to take action, trying to persuade government to take action on this matter. And I have no doubt that they will continue to do so, and we also will continue to be putting those pressures on. I hope that we can come together and agree our amendment here rather than the politically motivated motion.
Okay, thanks very much, Councillor Hannah. We'll now open up for debate. Oh, Councillor Bundy.
Thank you, Provost. Around this time last year, I actually brought forward a motion regarding the future of the Grangemouth oil refinery, and in that motion I called for the Council to conduct an economic impact assessment if one was not done by the Scottish Government or Scottish Enterprise. And I also called for the Grangemouth Future Industry Board, and I quote, give monthly updates regarding the future of Grangemouth Refinery and their views and recommended actions to help save Grangemouth Refinery. And that motion got the support of, I believe, the Executive, and no monthly updates were given by the Grangemouth Future Industry Board. So it was the opinion of the Executive last year that there had to be more transparency from the Grangemouth Future Industry Board, and that was the opinion, but it did not change the approach undertaken by the Future Industry Board. I think the also thing I'd like to point out here, and I acknowledge that my party was in government at Westminster until July. I think the whole point about the future of the Grangemouth refinery shows that there's cracks in the devolution settlement because there are some elements of it devolved and some elements of it reserved. And both governments, and including Labour and Conservative governments at Westminster, have allowed this to fall between those cracks, and both sides are blaming each other rather than taking the mantle and saying what has to be done in the here and now. And it's not good enough, and I've been saying that line for the past year, including at the hustings that was held regarding the future of the Grangemouth oil refinery during the general election. But in terms of the motion in front of us today, I will be voting for the one proposed by the administration. And the reason for that is because it solely focuses on Grangemouth. I think the Labour amendment dilutes the issue at hand. Yes, there's concerns about the wider central Scotland area, but this is a matter for Grangemouth, the future of Grangemouth, the future of the refinery, the future of the jobs related to the refinery. The economic impact assessment which was produced shows up to 2,800 jobs potentially lost in the supply chain because of the closure of the refinery. And we've not even talked about the future of the chemical plant, because if INEOS decides that that will shut in the future, it will dwarf the impacts of the refinery. So there's something that you have to focus on. keep the focus on Grangemouth rather than diluting it. And I also don't think an amendment praising the hard work of MPs is necessary. I think that's their job. I don't think we need to show that appreciation in an amendment for that. But keep the focus on Grangemouth, the action in the here and now. Fully support the calls for Grangemouth Future Industry Board to get in shape. I called for that last year. It's probably too late now, but if we can get that action taken, then that would be at least a step in the right direction. And yes, I also fully support calls for reports on the future of the growth deal, Green Freeport, Project Willow and Acorn, because all of these projects are fundamentally important to the long term of Grangemouth and Central Scotland's economy. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Bundy. We'll now go to Councillor Murtagh, then Councillor Spears.
Thanks, Provost. So I'm going to try and unpsychic myself to be able to make an effective contribution here. Unsurprisingly, I'm quite frustrated that this is coming to a special council. As I tried to tease out in my questions, we're now presumably about a month from when the paper was submitted for the request for the actual motion to be heard. And in that time, despite being completely insignificant in the eyes of many of my colleagues around that table, we'd be more than happy to sign a letter to the UK government or the Scottish government. I'm sure every member of this council would if we were asked, and I don't see why this needed to be a special council in order for us to highlight an issue which, as the news release says from last year, it was highlighted that the announcement for the proposal was for the ethanol plant was to cease in Q1. And I do recall, and I've checked back in notes, meetings that were open, in fact, to members of the public in which it was discussed when the ethanol plant would be closing. So I think the fact that it's here, I'm afraid, I find really difficult. And I find it very difficult to come to any conclusion other than it's just pointless party politicking for no good reason whatsoever other than saying we're doing something about it. And as is illustrated, we have a seat at the table with the UK government and the Scottish government. We've all got a voice publicly. We're all able to do things. We do not need the permission of this council to send letters, and we do not need the permission of this council to just be getting on with the job that we've all got. And I find it regrettable that what happens is that then when one party political motion comes forward, inevitably what happens is another political party will have to put up, well, we're doing something about it too. And I could sit here and tell you about all the wonderful work, genuinely, that Michelle Thompson MSP has done as the local MSP, and even bringing forward inquiry about the just transition and about the role of GFIB over years. But that is not going to help anybody. It isn't. And I think that, rather than, I'm not going to take part in the vote in this debate because we could have just got on with it. I don't understand why it's here. And I think that really what our constituents want on this incredibly important issue to everybody that is affected in this council area is for us not to be playing party politics and taking opportunities to just, grandstand and expect us to do the hard graft behind the scenes and work with each other to get the best outcomes. So I'm not going to be voting on whatever motions or amendments come forward. Thanks, Provost.
Thanks very much, Councillor Murtagh. We'll now go to Councillor Spears.
Thank you, and thank you, Councillor Murtagh, for highlighting the semantics that have taken place. 3 years ago, the SNP government in Edinburgh knew about this. We're sitting here with parts of the plant not running, and they're saying that it's not making a profit. Anything that's not running doesn't make a profit. There has been an action by the Westminster government to run a refinery in Grangemouth down, and it's been taken up. The cudgel has been grabbed by the new Labour government, and quite frankly, it's shocking. We shouldn't be playing semantics. We should be playing unity. We can have all the buzzwords we want about growth deal, You can't grow nothing. Futures Board that we've never heard from, and we've heard them meet twice. What future are they looking at? Because trust me, living here in Grangemouth and having worked in that industry for over 32 years, this is a disgrace. It's a disgrace by our governments. It's a disgrace by everybody involved, and we should unite on this and be very clear. This message shouldn't go in one person's name. It should go in our district's name, our council's name, Central Scotland's name, and especially the Scottish Government should be fighting a lot harder here to try and retain an industry. Because let's face it, this is a scorched earth policy in our country. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Spears. We'll now go to Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you, Provost. First of all, I think if this was something everyone knew about, I don't believe Ineos or Petro-Ineos would have issued a release announcing it, or that would have been subsequently covered by the media. I think it would have been taken as read. Similarly, I believe it's right and appropriate for members to bring motions forward on issues that are pertinent to the council area. This, unlike some topics of debate, whether here or elsewhere, is not a spurious attempt to grandstand. This is people's lives and livelihoods we're talking about. Like many people in Grangemouth and across the Falkirk district, I'm not quite sure what to make of the amendment to our motion before us today either. On first reading, I couldn't really get past the first sentence. While I appreciate that most members of Parliament do admirable work in raising issues on behalf of their constituents, and Mr Leishman appears to be the only person providing an effective opposition to his own Labour government, this is not what we are dealing with today. Of course, things have moved on somewhat since this meeting was first requisitioned, now that workers at the refinery have been issued with their redundancy notices, an entirely regrettable situation. You see, while I'm as capable of misremembering historical events as the next person, the events of a few short months ago are vividly stored in the collective memory of the people working within industry in Grangemouth, including the refinery. I remember seeing images of politicians walking in solidarity with the industry workers. I remember campaign leaflets and posters being delivered with slogans and nice pictures. I remember party leaders proclaiming loudly, in a place not far from this building, vote Labour to save the refinery. Well, 6 months down the line, and we can see just how hollow those promises were. We are no closer to saving the last refinery in Scotland and no closer to the protection of jobs and livelihoods that were so eagerly promised. Campaign in poetry and govern in prose. Hot air is getting us nowhere. I'd like to think that some people are waking up to the idea that it is irrelevant how many MPs with various coloured rosettes on their chest are sent to Westminster, with promises of Scotland being placed at the heart of government. But let's be absolutely clear about the matter at hand. Energy security in the United Kingdom is a sole responsibility of the UK government. Mealy-mouthed words and backslapping is not what the workers in Grangemouth need. They need action now, and their UK government is failing them. A point that Councillor Nimmo made quite eloquently earlier on. Some may even consider it a dereliction of duty and betrayal, given the promises made so very recently. Furthermore, the amendment today speaks of other businesses in other parts of the district, and Councillor Hanna mentioned about jobs. Well, let's take a look at that for a moment. Alexander Dennis announced last year that they were having to make redundancies. Well, here's another kicker. The Labour UK government have decided to put a tax on jobs by increasing employer national insurance contributions, forcing ADL into another round of redundancies. It poses a question, does this UK government actually like workers? What about our older and most vulnerable citizens? They've had their winter fuel payment ripped from them. Another betrayal. WASPy women who were supported by many members of the now Labour government when they were in opposition, promises of compensation that they rightly deserve lie next to tattered banners. Betrayal. Young families, mothers and children destined to be left in poverty by sustaining the horrendous two-child cap on welfare support. Another betrayal. These are all political choices, and many people voted for change at the last election. Will the new Labour government have the ability to change all of these things, especially for these workers and their families, many of whom voted for them at last year's general election? They say that when people show you who they are the first time, trust them. Well, it's clear that Keir Starmer's UK Labour government is showing us exactly who they are by their silence and inaction, and by extension, proving the point that we have always been making. Scotland needs to be in control of all decisions if we are ever to make real, meaningful and lasting positive change for workers, for communities and for the prospects of our future generations. Thank you, Provost.
Thanks very much.
19-1, Provost.
Okay. Thanks very much, Councillor Sinclair. Councillor Murtagh, we should like one.
Is because when Councillor Sinclair was speaking, he referenced that a statement that I had made, although he didn't name me, but he referenced that if we had known that INEOS were going to close the ethanol plant, that everybody would have known about it, and words to that effect. I have put a link in the chat from the release on the 19th of March 2024, which clearly gives notice that INEOS O&P UK announced a proposal to cease production of ethanol from its Grangemouth site in Q1 of 2025, and then gives the information in relation to that, including what INEOS's course of action would be, and coming to that, and that had been after a lengthy review and was a result, and the various results of what they had done prior to making that announcement. So that was public information, and it was publicly discussed in public meetings in which community councils and other members, including councillors, which I recall being at the meeting, were at. So that is a true fact, and I will not be misrepresented. Thank you.
Thanks
Provost,
very much,
Provost, can I just ask for a point of clarification? If you're calling a 1901, should you not have been mentioned in the previous statement in order to be able to call that in?
Mr Moody.
As I understand it, Councillor Murtagh is relying on the fourth aspect of 19.1, which is having previously spoken, that some part of their speech has been misrepresented in the debate. So no, but the short answer is you don't have to have been specifically mentioned.
Okay, we'll now go to Bailey Buchanan. I think you're on mute, Bailey Buchanan.
Is that okay now?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, obviously, the issue is so important. When I was talking earlier on about Councillor Murtagh, I'm sure that some people in that building would understand exactly where she was coming from, and eventually she came out. Councillor Hannah realised right away the implications of what she was saying. The fact of the matter is, we all realise the importance of this issue and the destruction of a community that's going to take place over the next few years, and that's sad. But could I say, in terms of, I'm just going to finish off with this briefly, Provost. There's a term used for certain motions, and in terms of this motion, the terminology that should be used for it is that this motion is a whaling wall. Thank you, Provost. A whaling wall.
Thanks very much, Bailey Buchanan. Any other questions? No. We'll go to Councillor Meikle. Would you like to sum up? Oh, Councillor McKay, my apologies.
No, it's fine, Provost, not a problem. It's really disappointing to be sitting in this chamber here listening to what is political ping pong, back and forward, politics being brought into this, when in actual fact it should be about our communities. I think everybody agrees it should be that, and yet we can't help ourselves. Well, I can. You can't help yourselves falling into political, I don't want to even say debate, it's political gamesmanship. Bailey Buchanan just called it a wailing wall of emotion. Councillor Murtagh suggested, what's the point of it? I have to agree with both my independent colleagues there. Having said that, I've listened quite intently to a number of colleagues speak very well. Councillor Bundy to my right here, I thought spoke very well. Where I tended to disagree with him a wee bit was the fact that he says this is a local issue. Unfortunately, it's not, James. This is a national issue. And to evidence that national issue, Councillor Nimmo, he mentioned, we're talking security issues here. If we are importing oils, we're talking environmental issues. If there's a problem on the river with these boats that we're proposing are being proposed to be brought in. We're talking about safety issues as well. And again, we're talking of energy issues. Now, that's not just about energy for Grangemouth and the local area. This is national. That's why, my apologies, James, I disagree with you on that point, but I did think you spoke particularly well about other elements. It's been disappointing to listen in and know that we have known, all of us, for a year, 2 years, probably 3 years, of the plans of INEOS. Mr. Ratcliffe's looked. I didn't know, I genuinely didn't know if he was going to be pulling out of Grangemouth or not, whether it was just a piece of sabre rattling to see if he could get Scottish Government, Westminster Government to loosen the purse strings and pay for maybe upgrading of his plant. It's an old plant, I get that. I don't particularly accept his argument that the refinery is unviable and it's losing money. That guy there bought Manchester United for an absolute fortune. That guy there is probably one of the richest men in the world. And if that guy there can't run a refinery to make money, I've got some issues with that. I'm going to apologise to Mrs. Templeman here, where I say that accountants, when asked for, can you get me some accounts, what would you like them to say? Do they make a profit? We can do that for you. Do they make a loss? We'll say that for you.
You've got a minute left, Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. So for me, I recognise the good work that's been done by specifically Brian Leishman, the MP. I think he's been very vocal against, I have to say, his own government, his own party, and I commend him for that. But I do feel that in 2 months, just a wee bit longer, we'll have a huge exodus of a skilled workforce from Grangemouth and ancillary businesses connected to it. What is our strategy to retain that workforce and maintain the Grangemouth and wider Falkirk employment options? We need an investment in jobs and infrastructure now and not in 2 or 3 to 5 years' time. We need it now. I'm going to offer, I haven't spoken to Councillor Murtagh, but I'm going to offer Councillor Murtagh, myself and some of the other independent councillors that we will actually write the letters to the Scottish Government and the Westminster Government, and we won't be held back by any party political allegiance.
4 minutes, Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. Appreciate your indulgence.
Thank you. Councillor Bundy.
19.1. In terms of talking about Grangemouth, I was saying that the motion is focusing on Grangemouth and the locality of Grangemouth, but as I've said many times in the past, this is a national issue in terms of national security, national energy, and that's my position.
I'm happy to acknowledge that, Provost. Thank you.
Thanks very much. For no other questions, we'll go to Councillor Michael John to sum up.
Thank you, Provost. I'm being really disappointed in the level of debate today. Our motion's not political, and it's a sad indictment on those that have chosen to make it political. It's unfortunate the tone of the amendment that has come forward, because that has then made it appear much more political. I really thought that as a whole council, we could have had an agreement and support the way forward. We as a council alone have very little ability to make the change that is required to actually at the ground level, but we can look to call our collective governments, and I say that governments, to account for the situation that has arisen in Grangemouth. To those that have said we knew about this for long enough, well, there's 30 councillors in this council. There's a motion being brought forward which is a proactive motion to actually do something. Anyone could have brought forward a motion at any time in relation to this. So you can take what you want from that. I think we need to be very clear, and not often do I agree with a Tory view, but I do agree with Councillor Bundy, and that's why this is very, very focused on Grangemouth and the significance of Grangemouth. And on many occasions I have said that I don't believe that significance has been really recognised nationally, particularly by our Westminster government. We know that there's changes that could be made at that level that could actually make a huge difference and allow the investment, including private investment in Grangemouth, that could actually save jobs and develop for the future. And I think that is something that we can proactively do. We can mump and moan about political motions in this chamber. I think it's far more important that we're seen to be doing something. And I would have much rather been in a position to have written to the Prime Minister and the First Minister in relation to the situation, knowing that there was a whole council approach to this. Hence the reason that it's so disappointing at some of the rhetoric that we've heard this afternoon to those that would obviously just want to sit back and do nothing. So I really hope that there's an ability there to support what we have in front of us, recognise that this is an attempt to try and bring the governments together to get a plan together very quickly. And I would also highlight that while the Grangemouth Future Industry Board has been mentioned as a potential vehicle in the motion, it isn't the only vehicle. There could be a separate task force set up specifically to deal with the issues of Grangemouth. That is not negating the bigger picture of the issues around manufacturing and the pressures on businesses and the rest of Falkirk and indeed in central Scotland. But I think in order to actually have an effect on something that is going to have a huge impact on the economy, if we don't do something, we need to be very focused. And I really urge people just to swallow their pride and actually support the motion.
Thanks very much, Councillor Meikle-John. We'll now go to the vote.
Thank you, Provost. And the motion appears on the face of the agenda, and it's moved by Councillor Meikle-John and seconded by Councillor Garner, against which there is an amendment which has been circulated, moved by Councillor Nimmo and seconded by Councillor Hannah. Provost Bissett.
Amendment.
Councillor Aitken.
Amendment.
Councillor Anslow.
Amendment.
Councillor Binney. Councillor Bowes.
Motion.
Councillor Brown. Councillor Brown, I think you're on mute.
Motion.
Bailey Buchanan.
Abstain.
Councillor Bundy.
Motion.
Councillor Colley.
Motion.
Councillor Devine.
Motion.
Councillor Forrest.
Motion.
Councillor Garner.
The motion.
Councillor Hannah.
Amendment.
Councillor Kelly.
Amendment.
Bailey Kerr. Don't think Bailey Kerr is still on the call. Councillor McCabe.
Abstain.
Councillor Meikle-John.
For the motion.
Councillor Murtagh.
Abstain.
Councillor Nimmo.
Amendment.
Councillor Patterson.
Amendment.
Councillor Redmond.
Amendment.
Councillor Ritchie.
Abstain.
Councillor Stinkler.
Motion.
And Councillor Spears.
Motion.
Provost, can I ask a question just while we're waiting on?
Just about to speak. Mr. Moody's just about to speak.
Thank you, Provost. There are 11 votes for the motion. There are 8 votes for the amendment. There were 4 abstentions, so the motion is carried.
Thanks very much, Mr. Moody. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Provost. The fact that we've called a special meeting to be writing a letter, can we see the letter before it goes and agree on the content of it? Can we have some agreement to that?
Mr. Moody.
that wouldn't be our normal course of action. No, the council decision authorises the council leader to write the letter. It will be prepared. It can be circulated afterwards, but it doesn't need to be circulated before it's sent.
Democracy in action. Thank you, Provost.
Okay, thanks very much, everyone. That's for your attendance. Councillor Murtagh, you have something to finally?
Just that Councillor McCabe had asked something earlier in the meeting, and to say that I'm more than happy to write a letter and take action, and I'm more than happy to circulate that round all members if they want to sign it, and they don't have to, but I think that we're all prepared to take action. It's just that we don't need to wait. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. We'll now close the meeting. Thank you for your attendance.
Thanks to the chair, Provost.